Hey up! It's August, and this time last year I sort of took a bit of a break from the channel, not completely, but I took the opportunity to do 1 or 2 trips and just put out 1 video a week, which worked quite well. The problem is this injury to my left foot still hasn't fully sorted itself out. I wanted to do the same this year, and although my foot is a lot better, I'm a little bit worried that I could well end up stranded sort of 100 miles from home and not being able to ride. So this year what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a couple of days off a week, which means I'm going to cut the filming out basically, but still knock out a couple of videos a week using sort of stock footage that I have, because I've got something like 18 terabytes of video material. So spoiler alert, over the next month you're probably going to see some footage that you've seen before, but I'll try to make it as interesting and entertaining as possible. I just need a little bit of a break. Now before we get our teeth into this video, I would just like to say how amazed I was by the response to last week's 2 videos. The views were good, but what did amaze me was the comments response. It was off the scales. Well, for this channel anyway, and it was a very clear sign that 95% of the people that watch those videos are wide awake. In fact, over the weekend they were coming in so thick and fast that for a while it sort of broke the comment section on YouTube. And I don't think it's fully caught up even now. So, the Royal Enfield Classic 350. I don't think there is an hour goes by when I don't get a comment from someone who's waiting for one to be delivered, or they've just taken delivery of one. So in this video I thought we'd do a status report on my Classic 350 and my thoughts on the bike over the first 500 miles. Now I've got 1 or 2 niggles or gripes, but I'm going to cover those off in a different video. I want to keep things positive this week. As you know, I did the oil change a couple of weeks ago. I haven't done the tappets as yet, the main reason being that I just filled the tank up with fuel at the time. I'm trying to assess what this bike's doing to the gallon, although I've got a pretty good idea, but I didn't want to mess up the measurements. Plus, you need to take the tank off to get at the rocker box, so it's better if the tank's empty, it's easier to manage. Now, my experience of the first 500 miles of ownership, which I know that's not an awful lot of miles, but it's enough to give you a very good idea about how this bike is going to be in the future, is a very positive one. The honeymoon period for me with this bike is over now, but my confidence levels in this bike have been very high right from the beginning, and nothing's happened to knock that. I feel a little bit unkind saying that, because obviously you should have a high degree of confidence in any new motor vehicle, but that Royal Enfield stigma of unreliability from previous decades hasn't quite sort of dissipated in the air yet. There are still doubters, and although my experience with all my Royal Enfields has been an extremely positive one, the tiniest remnants of those doubts still do sort of lurk in the back of my mind. But the Mini Mule, as she's come to be known in my household, has operated and performed absolutely flawlessly from day one. The vintage looks on this bike are just skin deep, and it does a really good job of hiding the fact that underneath the surface of this bike is a simple but 100% 21st century machine, designed and future-proofed to be the perfect companions for the roads of tomorrow, which, as we all know, are going to be much slower than the roads of today. The new Classic 350 does seem to have an extraordinarily long running period. A total of some 2,000 kilometres, which I think equates to about 1,200 miles. Up to the first 300 miles and the oil change, you were limited to about 42 miles an hour. I'm now able to ride it at around 50 miles an hour, which, to be honest, is about perfect for our roads. Although there are times when I would like to open it up a little bit more to the sort of 60 mark. It depends on the road. I've got no idea why this final stage of the running period is so long, and it is a little bit frustrating. But so far I have learned this. From 0 to 40 miles an hour, The engine runs like a little sewing machine, it's so smooth. Accelerating from 40 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour does get just a little bit lumpy. Then when you settle the bike out at 50 miles an hour, it reaches a whole new level of smooth. Now don't get me wrong, that lumpy section in the rev range isn't a problem, actually it's still very smooth, it's just exaggerated by the extremely smooth patch at either side of it. In a lot of ways this engine behaviour reminds me of the Himalayan and the Scram 411, where the bike actually gets smoother the faster you go. I don't know yet. I might be wrong, but that seems to be the way this engine operates. Which, if true, means that it's going to be at its smoothest and most comfortable between the 50 and 70 mile per hour mark. Which is exactly what you want in a small bike like this for fast commuting or a bit of touring. It's difficult to explain. The concept of vibration doesn't really come into the dynamics of this engine. You can only really talk about it by describing different levels of smoothness. In the last 2 or 3 years, the quality of engineering and the design of Royal Enfield's engines have sort of made a major leap forward. They're one of the market leaders now. Simple, reliable, trouble-free engines that reward the rider with exactly what he wants and no more. Even around town in slow-moving traffic, there's no compromise with this engine or the gearbox. It just operates flawlessly. It can be summed up in just a few words: smooth, responsive, predictable and reliable. Riding around town in stop-start traffic is effortless. It feels light and nimble, so even if you're stuck in traffic for quite some time, it doesn't get tiring to ride. Now obviously this isn't a sports bike, but even out on the open road, it still handles impeccably. It's the perfect small capacity all-rounder. Despite the recent hot weather, the engine doesn't seem to get excessively hot, which seems unusual to me for a modern air-cooled bike. In fact, compared to the Mule, the Classic 500 that I have, it's, well, cool. This is borne out by the condition of the running in oil at the first oil change, which looked like new, to be quite honest. Very minimal sooting or darkening, and keeping an eye on the oil sort of 200 miles after that oil change, the new oil itself looks pretty much the same as it did the day I put it in. By comparison, the Classic 500 literally cooks oil, so it's safe to say at this stage that the Classic 350 runs cool and doesn't give oil a hard time. There's going to be, in my opinion, no necessity to waste money by doing interim oil changes. Just stick to the service schedule. There's not a great deal I can say about the clutch. It's relatively light, it doesn't have you flexing your fingers at every opportunity, and it's predictable. It's the gearbox that's wowed me a little bit. For good reason. I've always been very complimentary about Royal Enfield gearboxes. They're one of the best in the business, if not the best. But even with an excellent gearbox, they're always going to sort of catch you out from time to time with a false neutral, a missed gear, or just plain obstinacy where it refuses to do what you want it to do. That's perfectly normal with any bike. This gearbox is not normal. It's worked with surgical precision from day one until the date of this review, and in that time it has never, and I mean never, glitched once, not even slightly. Gear engagement up or down is soft but responsive. In fact, as far as gearboxes go, it's an absolute delight. This is a lazy bike designed for relaxed riding. I don't know what its hustling capabilities are, we're going to have to wait until it's got a few more miles on the clock. But there's something about its character that makes you just want a relaxed ride. You don't, or I don't, feel the need to push it. Riding around town or, riding on A and B roads are this bike's natural habitat. It will keep up with other traffic with ease, and when it needs to, it's no slouch getting out of a junction or entering onto a roundabout. It's perfectly suited to what I would just call normal riding. It's not the engine, the handling or the braking that persuades you to slow down, it's the character of this bike that makes you just want to take it easy. I've no doubt that it is capable of hustling, but somehow the character of this bike just persuades your brain to relax. Take it easy, there's no need to rush. Your destination isn't going anywhere, it'll still be there. Just kick back, relax and enjoy the scenery. Now, I wasn't too sure about the slightly eccentric circa 1980 Honda-esque switchgear when I first got this bike. It seemed like an odd choice for a modern classic, but it is very intuitive, it works very reliably. The info button is very easy to find and operate on the move, and the LCD display sort of provides you with just the right amount of information. The eco indicator on the dashboard seemed a bit erratic when I first got the bike. It didn't settle down until after the first oil change. Maybe it was because the engine was tight, or maybe it was down to the oil that the bike came with. I'm not sure, but it is much more reliable now the bike's done a few miles, but it's clear that it is a very basic instrument. I found that with my style of riding, the eco symbol is present most of the time. And that being said, I estimate I'm getting just over 100 miles to the gallon, although I will sort of confirm that at a later stage when I've been able to sort of, ratify it by checking it properly. I've had no problems with the other electrical equipment, lights, etc., no blown bulbs. Again, everything's been perfect. Everything that people complained about that was present on the old Classic has now gone with this new iteration. It's completely lost that sort of industrial or agricultural character, and it feels like a thoroughly modern machine now, which of course is exactly what it is. I am yet to find any major flaws with the suspension or the brakes. Both are very competent. They do exactly what you expect them to do, although they're unremarkable. To sum the bike up so far, in a lot of ways it's exceeded my expectations. In other ways it's simply met my expectations, and although I sort of lament the loss of that agricultural character that the Classic 500 has, I can't say that I really miss it when I'm riding this bike. But if I could only have one bike and I had to choose between the two, it would be a really close contest. Right, I have a question for you. You've got a choice. I'll ask you to please leave your votes in the comments section on this video. Again, please keep your comments short. I know one or two people took exception about me asking that, but when you've got, like I did over the weekend, over 800 comments flooding in just for one video, it's a mammoth task keeping on top of everything, and when people write long essays, I just don't have the time to read them. It's not fair on the other commenters. And again, to those people belly aching about the fact that I don't reply to every comment, telling me that I'm pompous and that I'm just showing content for my viewers, do the maths yourself. If I've got 800, or even just on an average day, 500 comments a day, and I spent just 2 minutes reading and replying to each one, how long would it take? I'll tell you, shall I, even for an average 500 comment a day, it would take me 16 hours to get through those comments. I don't have the time to do that. Right, so you have two choices for Friday's video, and I'll be counting the votes at the end of the day on Wednesday, because obviously I've got to edit and narrate the video together on Thursday. Choice A, 5 things that I hate about the Royal Enfield Classic 350. Choice B, if I could only have one bike and I had the 500 and the 350 to choose from, which one would I choose? So that's a simple A or B. If you please just leave that in a capital letter at the beginning of whatever comment you want to make, that would be great because it makes it easier for me to count them. Right, I'm looking forward to seeing what you all come up with. Once again, thank you so much for watching this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please leave a like, and if you're not already a subscriber, please consider subscribing to this channel. It really does help me out. I will of course be back on Friday with one from those two choices of videos, so until then please ride safely and I'll see you soon.